Star Wars prequels are currently in the midst of a big resurgence, partially down to the lackluster conclusion of the Skywalker saga, but also because of recent media like the Clone Wars expanding upon the prequel trilogy in new and exciting ways. Episodes 1, 2, and 3 are all benefiting from a reappraisal that, quite honestly, has been long overdue. The prequels have always been my Star Wars, warts and all, and you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm Ewan, this is What Culture Star Wars, and here are 10 reasons you're wrong about the prequels. Number 10. They had some fascinating ideas, even if the execution wasn't always there. At the core of the prequel trilogy lies two fascinating questions. 1. How did Anakin Skywalker, the best of the Jedi Order, succumb to the dark side of the Force? And 2. How was the Emperor able to destroy the Jedi and Republic and build an empire in their ruins? No one can argue that those aren't fascinating topics to address, or that while the prequels fumble in their attempts to answer those questions, the simple act of seeing them conveyed on screen is inherently compelling. Arguably the most interesting aspect of the prequels, however, was the way in which George Lucas depicted the Jedi Order. Rather than conform to the vision relayed to Luke Skywalker by Obi-Wan Kenobi in the original Star Wars, Lucas showed a version of the Order long past its prime, absorbed by politics and a kind of zealotry that would, ironically, prove to be its undoing. Yes, they were war heroes, like Obi-Wan said, but that was precisely why they failed to defeat the Emperor. There's an element of poeticism there that is all too often overlooked, and one made all the better by the timely way in which Lucas handled Palpatine's rise to power. Number 9. Duel of the Fates might be Star Wars' most important scene. No, seriously. Not to say that my parents totally called this when they used to chat Star Wars with me when I was like 4, but they totally called this when they used to chat Star Wars with me when I was like 4. Duel of the Fates might just be the most important sequence in the Skywalker saga. It isn't just a flashy lightsaber duel between Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Darth Maul with a banger of a John Williams track in the background, but instead a pivotal moment that seals Anakin Skywalker's destiny in an instant. As Clone Wars co-creator Dave Filoni so eloquently explained just after the conclusion of the Clone Wars, the scene in question is a literal duel of the fates. That is, a duel for Anakin. Qui-Gon, already established as an unorthodox Jedi prepared to bend the rules, having long believed the Order had lost its way, was determined to train Anakin and let him fulfill his destiny as the Chosen One. He's the kind of father figure Anakin needs, but the duel instead leaves him with Obi-Wan as a master, as Maul slays Jinn in the Theed Palace. Kenobi, who by that point had been contemptuous and at times envious of the attention Jinn had given Skywalker, only promises to train the boy after Qui-Gon asks him to with his dying breath. Although the two would grow to become great friends, brothers even, Kenobi was not the teacher or father Anakin needed, no matter how much he wanted to honor his fallen master. It is such a powerful sequence already, but one that takes on an added salience when you reconsider just how pivotal a character Qui-Gon was in The Phantom Menace, and how the result dooms Anakin to the dark side of the Force. Number 8. You have to admire the craft that went into them. The other week, my YouTube recommendations lit up with an hour-long documentary on the making of The Phantom Menace. Why not, I think? Episode 1 is easily my favorite of the prequels, and who doesn't love a bit of behind-the-scenes hijinks? And honestly, the making of The Phantom Menace makes for some brilliant viewing. The documentary takes you all the way from the conceptual stage of development to Jake Lloyd's casting as Anakin Skywalker, all the way through to the pitfalls of location-based shooting and the pioneering special effects techniques that were developed at ILM. It also features Ewan McGregor having a very nice time on set, which is also lovely. The main point here is that the prequels left an indelible mark on blockbuster filmmaking. Lucas wanted to push technological boundaries, and while the use of blue screen was extremely dubious at times, the creative process that went into the prequels is easy to admire and better to explore. Number 7. The Clone Wars has only made them better. For all that the prequels had some bright ideas, they were notorious for executing them poorly. Take Attack of the Clones, for instance. On paper, it should be the most interesting Star Wars film ever made. You have Qui-Gon's former master revealed to be a new Sith Lord, a secret conspiracy to create an army for the Republic that seems like it was ripped straight from the paranoid thrillers of the 1970s, and obviously the beginnings of Anakin's fall to the dark side too. The issue is that these concepts weren't always explored to their fullest extent on screen. We never get to see Anakin Skywalker as either the legendary Jedi Knight or war hero he was meant to be in either episodes 2 or 3. We don't get to see much of the Clone Wars at all, really, or the little flourishes that make Anakin's fall, and indeed the collapse of the Republic, that much more emotionally galling. Enter the Clone Wars TV show, as well as subsequent Star Wars offerings. The Clone Wars was spearheaded by Lucas and Dave Filoni, and addresses many of the gaps the prequels left behind. It also rectifies some of their mistakes, bringing back Maul and transforming him into a truly legendary character, whilst further developing the friendship between Anakin and Obi-Wan, the other Jedi Knights in the galaxy, and the clones at their command. Plus, there's Ahsoka Tano, who has since become one of the most beloved Star Wars characters of all time, and for good reason. What I'm getting at here is that watching the Clone Wars fundamentally makes the prequels better. They benefit from the added emotional context, and other Star Wars efforts have used its example to great effect, whether it be Claudia Gray's Master and Apprentice novel, further exploring the relationship between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan pre-Episode 1, or works like Star Wars Rebels and Jedi Fallen Order, unpacking the aftermath of Order 66 and the rise of the Empire. The prequels are constantly getting better, and that has been really exciting to watch unfurl over the last decade. Number 6. They introduced a new generation to Star Wars. At the end of the day, more Star Wars is a good thing. New films provide what old ones can't, in that you're a part of that roller coaster from announcement through to the premiere. The original trilogy should of course always be every Star Wars fan's entry point into the saga, but equally, it's difficult to overestimate the impact new material can have on fans. For me personally, I was Star Wars daft growing up. I watched and then rewatched our old VHS tapes of A New Hope, Empire, and Return of the Jedi back to back, but the one I was most obsessed with was The Phantom Menace. It was the first film I saw in theaters next to the Iron Giant, and made a huge impression on me growing up. Not just because the man playing Obi-Wan Kenobi shared my first name, but you know, these things do matter when you're 3. But there is of course more to it than that. For kids who grew up in the late 90s and early noughties, the Star Wars prequels were all-encompassing. The films, the toys, the video games, they were everywhere, and I know that I personally find it difficult to picture a version of Star Wars that the prequels aren't a part of. To grow up with the prequels was great. Star Wars fandom is better because of it, despite the years of negativity that has come its way. Number 5. They improved the mythology. There are many justifiable criticisms of the prequels, including the advent of midichlorians and Anakin Skywalker's abrupt turn to the dark side. Those two critiques in particular have been used to say that the prequels have managed to make the galaxy far, far away feel so much smaller than it once did, that the films are lesser for answering what should have remained unanswered. However, for all that the prequels failed to execute on some ideas, their sheer existence adds complexity to Star Wars. The original trilogy is still phenomenal, and to say that it was black and white would be patently false. The Jedi, Obi-Wan and Yoda are deceptive in those first 3 films, and darkness is forever a presence in Luke Skywalker's character. The prequels expanded upon those ideas. Their contribution to the original films goes acknowledged in Episode 8, where Luke tells Rey of how the Jedi's own arrogance allowed Darth Sidious to destroy the Republic and create the Empire. Is it a little bit weird how Darth Vader built C-3PO? Yeah, but is it worth getting rid of that for pod racing, the clones, and all the other expanded media goodies that have improved the saga since they came about? Not by a long shot. Number 4. There are some fantastic performances. Bless Sir Alec Guinness. Without him, we wouldn't have Obi-Wan Kenobi, but Ewan McGregor just is that character. He acts his socks off in the prequels, elevating the material and in turn redefining a beloved Star Wars character. McGregor is truly brilliant in those films, and the fact he'll be reprising the role alongside Hayden Christensen as Darth Vader in the Kenobi series on Disney Plus is simply wonderful. Speaking of Christensen, for all that his performance as Anakin Skywalker was met with ridicule and frequent memery, it isn't without its charm. A lot of the actors in the prequels are weirdly neutral, a result of Lucas's direction and some stilted writing, and Christensen bore the brunt of criticism in Episode 2. However, he totally nails Anakin as a young, arrogant man, one resentful of the Jedi lifestyle and tempted by attachment, and finds added freedom in Revenge of the Sith, where he's really allowed to go off the rails. Then there's of course Ian McDiarmid, who so effortlessly embodies the duality of the slimy, duplicitous Palpatine and the terrifying Emperor that it's honestly scary. He's pitch perfect across all 3 films, and brings a whole new dimension to the ghoulish figure who plagued nightmares in the preceding decades. Number 3. They pioneered a new aesthetic. Not to begrudge the sequel trilogy, which with the obvious exception of Episode 9 is genuinely strong in my opinion, there is a lot to be said about aesthetics and how those films were found wanting in bringing a new kind of Star Wars to the fore. There are obvious reasons for this, the fact they take place after the original trilogy being one of them, but they feel derivative, comfortable even. They're tapping into a version of Star Wars that everyone knows and loves, at least visually. The prequels, by contrast, pioneered a whole new kind of aesthetic to contrast with the rougher, carbon-scored edges of the original films. They're sleek, extravagant, and while the iconic designs seen in episodes 4, 5, and 6 are foreshadowed greatly throughout, they present an image of Star Wars that was fresh and exciting, and unquestionably otherworldly. Number 2. The Backlash is just really boring. Whether it's a decade's worth of memes having finally rehabilitated their image or not, can we all just agree that hating on the prequels in this day and age is, well, really boring at this point? Look, I get it. There are clear aspects of episodes 1, 2, and 3 that categorically do not work. That said, can we also please acknowledge the toxic effects this kind of backlash has had in the past? Ahmed Best, who brought Jar Jar Binks to life in the prequels, was driven to depression by the hate that went his way. No one needs to hear your crappy Jar Jar joke in 2020, especially when the character was intended for younger audiences in the first place. Jake Lloyd, who played Anakin Skywalker in The Phantom Menace, retired from acting partially because of negative coverage of his performance. Hayden Christensen also received a barrage of abuse, and while Lloyd's personal circumstances have not improved, it's been genuinely moving to see Best and Christensen welcome back to Star Wars with open arms. Look, at the end of the day, the prequels are approaching 2 decades of existence, and they're as much a part of Star Wars as any of the other films. If you don't like them, fine, but the insipid response that used to dominate internet discourse grew tedious a long time ago. And number 1, they had an actual plan. Trying to find consensus when it comes to Star Wars is near enough impossible, so it's worth clarifying my own position on the sequels before I get into this particular entry. Episode 7? Great. Episode 8? Superb. Episode 9? Not so much. But if there was one thing most fans would be able to agree on regarding the sequels, it's that they suffered from a lack of planning. There was no cohesive vision that bound The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, or The Rise of Skywalker together, with Lucasfilm instead allowing each film to be developed independent of the other. This approach worked with the original trilogy, but the end result this time around was a slapdash finale that spent so much time on doing what the previous effort accomplished, it ended up rupturing the foundations of the saga altogether. The prequels, by contrast, did have a plan. They were shepherded by George Lucas from beginning to end, and he told the story he wanted to tell. Was it flawed? Absolutely. But it was harmonious as opposed to dissonant. Everyone was singing from the same hymn sheet, and at the end of the day, there's a lot to be said about seeing that one vision unfurl over the course of 3 films. And those were 10 reasons you might be wrong about the Star Wars prequels. And hey, if you enjoyed the video, it would be amazing if you could subscribe to What Culture Star Wars as well. We're trying to create a fun, positive space for Star Wars fans to enjoy, and with loads more content coming in 2021, we would be honored if you would join us.